Well, I am Will Cain, and I'm in a special edition of Jesse Watters Primetime. We all know good old-fashioned playground rules. Rule number 1, never say no to a dare, especially a double dare.
Go at the same time, huh?
That sounds like a dare, Harry.
It's a double dare.
Yeah, okay, you're on.
It's not so bad.
It's more tingly than hot.
Yeah.
On an absolutely insane day, we focus on what is most important. And what is most important is potential corruption and compromise at the highest levels of the United States of America. So when it comes to the playground, Joe Biden's playground, it's 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and everyone is daring Joe to run for re-election.
We asked folks in this poll, do you think Joe Biden should run for re-election? Look at this, only a quarter, 26%, said they think he should run for re-election.
Overall, the president's job rating is not in a good place when you're seeking re-election.
Most Americans don't want to vote for an 81-year-old man for president.
Joe Biden is asking for 4 more years. When 74% of Americans think the country's heading the wrong way, it's hard for the boss to say, give me 4 more years.
But Joe Biden is playing by playground rules, and he is not going to say no to a dare.
Mr. President, why do you want to run more years? So I can get to answer your questions. Stay tuned.
Well, rumors are rampant that Joe is set to announce his run for re-election in 2024. He will announce that bid, it is suggested, tomorrow. But taking this dare is a little bit like, well, the cast of Dumb and Dumber. It's like eating that bowl of atomic peppers for Joe Biden. Why? Because the moment that he announces, the dam breaks for the Biden crime family. The media and the intelligence communities won't be able to contain Biden's dirty laundry list. Instead, they'll have to wake up. They'll have to smell the roses. When House Republicans, if House Republicans do as they suggest they will, and that is root out the bad apple of the Biden family, Hunter, but not stop at Hunter Biden. Expand this investigation into what appears to be a family-wide corruption affair.
We thought that there were 2 or 3 Biden family members that would be implicated in these bank violations. Nearly 3 weeks later, we walk out of Treasury having poured over thousands of pages of documents, and I can tell you that there were more suspicious activity reports than had been previously reported, and many more Biden family members that were involved in the influence peddling scheme. We now have 9 and counting Biden family members who are zinged by at least one bank for receiving suspicious wires from our adversaries around the world.
It's not just going to be the big guy and Hunter. According to Comer, as you just heard, there's hard evidence, he says, that 9 Biden family members were involved. Comer thinks, by the way, that number, it could go up to 12, and that could also still just be the tip of the iceberg. You see, whistleblowers are lining up and getting ready to throw Biden under the bus. Here's one, and this is remarkable. Former Obama-Biden White House stenographer Mike McCormick, who says he saw something he's calling a kickback scheme. It's when Vice President Biden, then Vice President Biden, took a trip to Ukraine. Just 3 days, by the way, before Hunter Biden signed on to join the board with no qualifications of energy company in Ukraine, Burisma. He says he has hard evidence to put an end to Biden's career.
Joe Biden is lying. Joe Biden is a criminal. That's the bottom line. I don't care if he goes to Timbuktu or Ireland or anywhere. He's a criminal. And I've got the evidence. If they put me in front of the grand jury that's right now seated in Wilmington with Special Prosecutor David Weiss, my testimony becomes the evidence that will put him in jail or will lead to his impeachment.
Daunting. But Joe Biden's looking him right back in the face and saying, I double dare you. You see, not only is he still running or set to announce another run for presidency, but he's running with who right by his side? Hunter Biden. I don't know if you've noticed this, but Hunter's been following his daddy around a lot lately. Biden holds an Easter egg roll. Hunter is there. Biden jets off to Ireland. Hunter's there too, and doesn't look like he was too camera shy either.
Hey, Dad, he's got a question. What's your question?
What's the top step to success?
What's the top what?
Step for pushback here, and everyone push
Top
up.
step to success?
Yes.
Well, making sure that we don't all have COVID. What are you talking about? The success. Like, what's the key to success? What's the key to success? You know what I found out the key to success is? Don't go back anymore. And I'm not sure I'm the best guy to explain it.
Right there, side by side. And rumors are we're going to be seeing a lot more of Hunter in the coming months. Why? It's suggested Hunter may be living in the White House. The New York Post's Miranda Devine is reporting that Hunter may have moved in to hide out from his baby mama. That's former stripper London Roberts, who's suing him over child support payments for their 4-year-old daughter. Hunter says, "It's not mine, not that kid." And Miss Roberts is now asking an Arkansas court to have the first son jailed after he failed to fork over his financial records, as ordered by the court. And now, by the way, just today, the judge overseeing that case, he ordered the Hunter's legal team to bring Hunter into court, that he needs to start showing up. And the judge asked his legal team, hey, is this laptop that supposedly contains your financial records, is it real? But back to whether or not Hunter's going to show up in that courtroom. Who's going to serve him legal papers? Who's going to go to the White House? Hunter's acting like he's untouchable, and he may well be untouchable. We found out from an IRS whistleblower that Biden's Department of Justice is mishandling the tax evasion case that appears to be of Hunter Biden's. He's alleging that federal prosecutors and their office in Delaware has been politically influenced so as to not vigorously pursue Hunter Biden. We've also heard reports that the Justice Department has been sitting on enough evidence to charge Hunter for a year. Now, that's on top of the Biden campaign orchestrating a cover-up of the laptop in 2022 when they told former acting CIA Director Mike Morrell, this is something we now know to be true, to lie. They told Morrell to lie and say the laptop was, quote, Russian disinformation, a falsehood that many still believe today, a falsehood that at the time they knew was a lie. That did not keep, though, 50 of the highest level intelligence officers in the United States from signing a letter to bury damaging information on a presidential candidate. I'm talking about Michael Hayden, James Clapper, Leon Panetta, and almost everyone at the highest levels of the United States intelligence lying, running a disinformation campaign on Americans to swing an election. Why wouldn't Hunter think he's untouchable? And now, not just content to be untouchable, he's playing the victim. His legal team is going on offense. They're demanding ethics actions against Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene for quote, falsifying, saying Hunter did crack and had sex with prostitutes. They call it defamatory malicious. They're calling them conspiracy theories against Hunter Biden. I know something or two. Went to law school, at least enough to suggest I slept at a Holiday Inn Express. I know something or two about defamation. You know what the ultimate defense is? Truth. Is the laptop not Hunter's? It appears he's admitted to it being his laptop. And if the laptop is his, so are all the pictures of Hunter smoking crack and fooling around with prostitutes not also true? And then the actually important part to the United States of America. What about all the emails with business associates from China, Ukraine, Russia, Romania, Kazakhstan? We could keep going. If all those business emails are on the laptop, are they not also true? While we're at it, how about 10% for the big guy? The Bidens think they run the playground. Back to playground rules. And remember, Joe said, nobody messes with a Biden.
Thanks for everything. Thanks for coming down. We appreciate it. I'll keep the food.
You raised some, no one.
Yeah.
Now Joe's rubbing it in our faces. He's running again, and he's doubling down. He's double daring us to do something about Hunter and his family. So the question is, are we going to take him up? on his dare.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.